Have you ever wanted to try going to a therapy session, but maybe you felt a little bit nervous, maybe you weren't quite sure what to expect, and it kind of ended up putting you off ever trying? Well, believe me when I say that hundreds, if not thousands of people feel exactly the same way, but hopefully I'm going to put your mind at ease when I walk you through the process of what a therapy session is like. Because hand to heart, I truly believe that therapy is such an amazing tool and it can help so many people. It's really helped me in the past come out of some really dark places. Obviously, there are lots of different types of therapy. Today, I'm just going to be talking about the general concept of talk therapy and counseling. I've also broken up the video into frequently asked questions, so you can just skip around in the chapters. I've linked them below. Just go to the section that you find most interesting. So let's start off by actually talking about what talk therapy and counseling is. Well, talk therapy, sometimes it's called psychotherapy, is a situation where a trained mental health professional, like a psychologist or a psychiatrist, sits down with a client and goes through a structured conversation with them. And the aim of these conversations is essentially to help the client with any psychological, emotional, or behavioral issues that they're having. And the purpose of talk therapy is to facilitate personal growth, promote self-awareness, improve mental health, and just in general enhance your overall well-being. Counseling is actually a subcategory of talk therapy, and it's usually used to deal with specific life circumstances that a client has had. So for example, if someone has just lost a job or lost a loved one or broken up in a relationship, then counselors usually help clients navigate those specific circumstances. Counselors usually provide their clients with support, guidance, and coping strategies to help them adapt to the changes that they're going through and to help them develop healthier behavior patterns. Both talk therapy and counseling have a shared goal of just generally promoting emotional well-being and psychological well-being. There are lots of different techniques that each individual therapist uses, and there are lots of different types of therapy. Some examples of those different types of therapy includes cognitive behavioral therapy, humanistic therapy, psychodynamic therapy, solution-focused therapy, or acceptance and commitment therapy. You don't need to worry about what kind of therapy you need to have. Usually when you go in to see your therapist, they'll have a better idea of what will work best for you. So now that we know what therapy is, let's talk about how to actually find a therapist. And the way that you would find a therapist really depends on how you're going about it. So for example, are you going to get a private therapist, or are you going to go through some public health service like the NHS in the UK? Because depending on which route you take, then the way that you would find the therapist would be kind of different. If you decide to go through a public health route like the NHS in the UK, then typically what happens is that you would go to your GP or family doctor and you would speak to them about the symptoms that you're having, how you're feeling, and you might need to request to see a therapist, or they might suggest to you that you would see a therapist. Then typically you'll get referred to a mental health service and you'll get usually put on a wait list, because usually for public health services like the NHS, the demand for mental health services and psychologists and psychiatrists is so high that people tend to be on a wait list anywhere from 6 to 12 months. Not everyone, some people might be a bit luckier than that, but typically the wait lists are very, very long. You also don't really have a choice of which therapist you're going to get. You kind of just go with the therapist that you're given, rather than being able to like pick and choose who you go with. But on the plus side, usually when you go with a public health service, it's either free like in the NHS, or it costs much lower than going through a private route. If, however, you choose to go down the private route, then you have complete control over which therapist you choose. And if you're not happy with the therapist that you've chosen, then of course you can just change them quite easily. You can also read client reviews, and you can usually be seen in a matter of days, if not weeks. The problem, however, with private therapy is that if you're doing it for a long time, it can get really expensive. That's why most people try to go through the public route first. But if you're in crisis, you can't really be waiting 6 to 12 months to see a therapist and then not even really be sure that they're going to help you, or that you're going to connect, or that you can change easily. So it's a really difficult position for most people to be in. Do I pay the money and pick the therapist and have all the freedom, or do I go through the public route and have it for free but then not be really sure if it's going to be any good for me? Regardless of whether you go through a public route or a private route, I would still try and get a recommendation from someone that you know, either a family member or a friend, because it can be helpful to know that this person has had a good experience with this therapist. So now let's assume that you found a therapist and you're good to go. The next thing you need to decide is if you're going to do the therapy in person or online. Some therapists only offer one option, but quite a few therapists offer both. So let's quickly go through some pros and cons of each. Some pros of doing therapy in person are that you can see the therapist in real life and you can form more of a rapport and connection with them. It obviously also feels more natural to us to have a conversation in person, and you don't need to really worry about any tech issues or glitches or the Wi-Fi going off or anything like that. Doing it online, you don't have that ability or that chance to build the rapport and connection as easily, and the therapist can't get a direct visual of your reactions, but it's still been proven to work very, very well even online. And of course, if you do it online, then you can go anywhere in the world. It's probably cheaper as well, because the therapist doesn't have to pay for an office space, and also you save on travel costs as well and travel time. So whether you should do it online or in person is really dependent on your own personal preferences. And if it's in person, then you just rock up to the therapist's office and you walk in, or if it's online, they'll send you a meeting link, like a Zoom link or something, and you can do it there. So the next thing that a lot of people want to know is that, do you need to prepare for your therapy session? And usually the answer is no, especially for the first session. You don't really need to prepare that much. You just want to go in with having an idea of what your main issues are, what you're mainly struggling with, and what you need help with. It can be helpful to bring some items with you. So for example, bringing some tissues, a water bottle. Some people like to take a notepad and pen to jot some things down. And depending on your therapist, you might need a form of payment. But otherwise, that's pretty much all you need. If you're in person, I would say definitely take a jacket with you or a scarf, just because you don't want to be cold while you're in the therapy session and get distracted by the cold. And if you're doing it online, then find a quiet room where you're not going to be distracted so that you can focus on the session, and also out of respect for your therapist. And lastly, if you take any medications or you've been diagnosed with a mental health disorder in the past, then it's good to just have a list of them that you take with you to the session so that the therapist is fully aware of your circumstances. So now that you've found your therapist, you're in your first session, what should you expect to happen? Well, firstly, practically speaking, if you're in an in-person session, then you walk into the office and the setup looks like you have a chair here, the therapist has a chair here, and you just sit across from one another, basically like you would in any normal conversation. The days of lying down on a chaise longue couch aren't really as common anymore. And if you're online, then like I said before, you just open your meeting link and you have a video call. Some therapists can let you just do it as an audio call, but most of them prefer video call because then they can see, like I said, your body language and your reactions, and that's a really important part of the therapy process. So the aim of that first therapy session is just for your therapist to get to know you, get to know your background a little bit, why you're coming to therapy, and what your goals are. It's really just a very casual conversation. It's nothing to be fearful of or worried about because it's just a chat. And you have full control over what you want to share and what you don't want to share. The therapist will probably ask you some guiding questions just to get a better understanding of the whole situation and to understand you. And each therapist has a different approach to doing this, but some of the questions that they may ask include, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? What are the main challenges that you're facing at the moment? How's your work life? How's your personal life? Have you been to therapy before? Have you been diagnosed with any mental health disorders? Do you take any mental health medications? How's your sleep? What do you do for fun? Just essentially basic questions to get a better understanding of you and your mental health background and your current life circumstances. And just to mention, it's not usually a line of questioning like an interrogation. It's honestly just a fluid conversation as if you were speaking to a friend. And each therapist has a different approach. Some of them have more of a structured approach in their sessions, and others are a little bit more casual and fluid. In that first session, the therapist might also discuss the type of therapy that they think would be best for you, and they might talk about the frequency of therapy that might be good. So for example, let's start with 2 sessions every week or 1 session every week and then take it from there. And therapy is a very collaborative process, so they're not just going to sit there and tell you this is what you need to do. It's going to be a discussion around what suits you and what works for you as well. So you finally made it to your first therapy session, and you may be wondering, how am I going to feel before, during, and after the session? So before the session, a lot of people, myself included, can feel quite anxious and nervous about going into their first session. And that's completely normal. That's a completely normal reaction. And there are lots of reasons for why you might feel this way. But I promise you, once you actually get into the session and you start talking to the therapist, then your nerves just kind of disappear and you forget about them because you just focus on the conversation and what you want to say. And if it helps reduce your nerves in any way, just keep reminding yourself that it's just a conversation. You have complete control over how much you want to share or how little you want to share. The therapist is in no way trying to trick you into divulging information that you don't want to say or telling them your deepest, darkest secrets. No, they don't want to do that. There's no trickery involved in the process. It's just a conversation, and you are in the driver's seat. You have control over what happens and what you say and what you do. They are just there to help guide you through the journey, and these are professionals with years of experience, so they know how to make you feel comfortable, not feel judged, and make you feel safe in the space as well. So leave the heavy lifting to them, and all you really need to do is just show up and talk. Now obviously how you feel during the session again is dependent on you as an individual, but it's very likely that you might get upset during that session because you've probably gotten to the point where you've come to have therapy or counseling because you're feeling being not your best self. So it is very normal to feel upset and triggered during therapy sessions, and it's very, very normal and common to cry. I cried so much during my initial therapy sessions. I think I cried almost every single therapy session, and I had no shame about it. I honestly had been penting up all these emotions all week, and I was just waiting for them to be released. So it felt very cathartic to actually just cry and let it all out. So obviously not everyone will cry or get upset during the therapy sessions, but do keep in mind that you will likely be discussing very, very heavy topics, either past traumas or current traumas that you're going through, or just very difficult situations, experiences, emotions, just heavy, heavy stuff. So it can feel quite heavy whilst you're in the session. It might not feel heavy in every single session that you have, but especially if you're just starting out, then it can get quite emotional. But please don't worry at any point that the therapist is judging you. They're completely used to it, and they are not there to judge you. They are professionals. They've seen it all before, and they are there to help. So just release the emotions that you need to release, and it will be quite cathartic. Now, how you feel after the session can also vary a lot. For me personally, I always felt so much better after pretty much every single therapy session. Even though my circumstances hadn't changed, my problems were still there, everything was the same, I just felt lighter, I felt more clear, and I felt more able to tackle what I was dealing with. But for some people, they may actually feel worse after a therapy session. And this is a really important point to touch on, because during the therapy session, you're obviously revisiting some really heavy stuff. So you're very unlikely to come out of it feeling like your most happy-go-lucky self. Even if you do feel hopeful, you probably need time to process what was said during the session. And the problem with this, and the reason I need to touch upon it, is because some people come out of the session and think to themselves, well, oh my God, I feel worse than when I went in, so this isn't going to help me, and then they just stop right there. And that's a really bad mindset to have. And it's usually down to just not being educated about the therapy process, because all of the emotions that you feel are part of the healing journey. And the worst thing that you can do is have one bad day and just quit forever and never try therapy again. Because most people think that the healing process is a linear one where you just keep going up, 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 but actually it's more like this, up and down all the time. So what you need to do is just push through that up and down roller coaster, because it doesn't mean that you're not making progress or that you're not going to get better. It's just part of the journey. I do want to add a small caveat to this. Obviously, if your therapist is the reason that you're not feeling good, whether it's their communication style, or maybe they made you feel a little bit unsafe during the session, then obviously change therapists. But don't let your own personal emotions and feelings, because you've discussed something difficult, be the reason that you stop. Something else that people might be wondering is your therapist going to do anything weird during the session? If they are a professional, ethical therapist, then this is a hard no. They aren't going to mysteriously hypnotize you or psychologically trick you to get some information out of you. That's super unethical. And if there is any kind of different thing that they want to try, they have to get informed consent. Informed consent means that they've given you all the information up front, you know what you're going into, and you have enough information to make a decision, but they absolutely will not and cannot do something strange behind your back that you're not aware of. So please, if that is something you're worried about, do not worry about it, because that is highly unethical. The other thing that people often wonder is, will your therapist give you advice? And again, this is a really big misconception, but therapists should not give you advice. They are not there to tell you what to do. They are just there to help guide you towards making better decisions or developing better behaviors, amongst other things. But essentially, no, they don't give you advice. They won't sit there and tell you do this, this, and that to get better, because it doesn't work that way. And just to make it clear, because it can kind of get a little bit hazy, giving advice is not the same as offering a suggestion. For example, your therapist might say, I suggest that you try this technique to improve your anxiety, or I suggest that you read this kind of book. That's different to giving you advice and saying, I think you should wake up at 7 a.m. every single day and do this and then this and then this. It's slightly different, and I'm not sure if I'm using the best analogies here, but it is an important distinction, because obviously they are going to help guide you, and that's part of the process of guiding you, is giving you information and resources, but it's different to telling you what to do. And that distinction between advice and suggestions is important, because it's important to the way that you go into therapy and the mindset that you have. Because the mindset that you should have when going to therapy is that you are in charge of your healing, not your therapist. It's not your therapist's job to heal you, it's your job to heal you. They're just a trained professional who have years of experience doing so and help guiding people towards their healing. So that's what they're there for, to help guide you. But you need to put in the work to actually heal. They're not a wizard who can just magically wave their wand and poof, you're healed. You need to put in that work and you need to take responsibility for your own healing. So please don't go into therapy expecting your therapist to be this all-knowing healer and then quit when you find that they're not saying the things that you want them to say or giving you the advice that you wanted them to give, because it doesn't work that way. People also wonder if their therapist will tell other people what was said during the session. And no, this is strictly not allowed. They are bound by confidentiality, both ethically and legally, so they can't share your personal information with other people unless it's their colleagues and they need to as part of the process, or if they have to cooperate with the courts of law or with the police. And the only caveat to this is if your life is in immediate danger or someone else's life is in immediate danger, then yes, they have to report it to the police, especially if there is a minor involved. But if your life is not in immediate danger or someone else's life is not in immediate danger, then no, they can't share anything that you've told them. And that doesn't mean that you should restrict the information that you give to your therapist. For example, if you self-harm or if you've had suicidal thoughts, they're not gonna just jump on the phone straight to the police as soon as you tell them that, because in most cases, your life isn't in immediate danger, and it's very common for people to have both of those things. So don't hold back when you're speaking, and usually when they call the police, it's probably because they're trying to save your life. So don't worry about that. It's super uncommon for that to happen, and if it is gonna happen, you're probably in crisis and you probably need a lot more help than they can offer. Otherwise, it's strictly confidential. So you've met your therapist, you've had a conversation with them. What should you do if you don't like your therapist? Now, if you're in the public health sector, then it can be quite hard to switch therapists. You might need to ask your GP or the service that you've been referred to, but you might end up on another wait list. So it can be kind of difficult in the public health space. But if you're in the private space, then it's very easy to switch therapists. Your therapist is supposed to make you feel safe, comfortable, and like you're not being judged. And the connection that you have with them is incredibly important. Connection and rapport with your therapist is a really big part of the therapy process. So if you feel like for whatever reason they're not making me feel good, or I'm just not connecting with this therapist, I'm not vibing with them, then yes, of course you can change. Try not to ghost them, at least let them know that you want to stop the therapy process, even though I appreciate that is quite difficult. But just out of respect for their time, it's good to let them know. Also, be mindful of the fact that you're not switching therapists or you don't like the therapist just because they haven't lived up to your expectation of therapy. Like they haven't sat there and given you a list of advice or validated every single thing that you've said, because that might not be the right reason to switch. But of course, it's all up to you. And if you want to switch and see someone else, then that's completely your prerogative. But the most important thing to say here is that if you do have a bad therapy experience with one therapist, please don't let that put you off therapy as a whole. That's a super common experience that people have. They see someone who's bad and then they never want to do therapy again. But for so many people, had they just found the right therapist and continued to search, then they would be much better off on their healing journey and they would be processing what they need to process instead of just pushing it aside again. Had I just stopped therapy after that second therapist that I went to where he was making me feel a little bit uncomfortable, then I would have never found my other therapist and I would still be in a really, really dark place and I would still be struggling a lot. So I heavily advocate for the fact that your first therapist may not be the perfect therapist, but just keep searching and I promise you'll find someone that works for you. So now you've reached the end of your first therapy session. So what should you expect to happen at the end and afterwards? Well, towards the end, the therapist is probably going to ask you when you want to see them again and develop a schedule or routine for further therapy sessions. If you're not sure if you want to continue, you can either pencil something in and get back to them, or just say, can I have a bit of time to check my diary or check my schedule, and then you can get back to them and decide if you want to continue or not. As for payment, if you go through the public health route, then you probably don't have to pay anything, or your insurance or someone takes care of it. But if you're going private, then different therapists have different forms of payment. So some of them will actually ask you to pay up front. Others you can just pay cash towards the end of the session, but most of them just invoice you via email afterwards and you can pay at a certain point later. In between sessions, it's not usually appropriate to email or message your therapist with lots of questions and lots of life updates. But of course, if you want to ask for a particular resource, or if you want to remember something that was said, then you can message them and contact them. And obviously it depends on each individual therapist. Some may mind it more than others. But in general, I would say be respectful of their time and just message them if you really need to. So that brings us to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope I was able to put your mind at ease if you were feeling nervous or anxious about going to therapy. And I really encourage you to just bite the bullet and do it. I'm a huge advocate for therapy. It's changed my life completely. It's changed people's lives around me. I actually think every single person on this world can actually benefit from therapy. And if you have any other questions about therapy, I'm more than happy to answer them. Just write them in the comments below. If you're interested in other ways to improve your mental health, then I have a video talking about how to make meditating easier, and you can watch that video here. Otherwise, I hope you have a really fantastic day, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!